Well, Madison and Jefferson are wondering why some of these people who bought bonds just recently, the people who had bought them just within a few days before Hamilton made his proposal, before it became public, they're wondering why people would buy bonds. Bond prices have been just going down steadily. Why would you want to buy a bond? What do you think? And they came up with the idea that some of those people bought those bonds because they had been tipped off about the impending plan for funding. That somebody had told them, go buy some bonds. You can get bonds today for $500, and then when Congress approves Hamilton's plan, you're going to get back $1,000. So somebody, they believed, Madison and Jefferson in their private meetings were convinced that somebody had told these people to go out and buy the bonds. And it's no secret who they thought it was. They thought it was Alexander Hamilton himself. That Hamilton had tipped off some of his good friends, some of his buddies. He's an insider. Today this would be called inside trading, and it's illegal as hell. But he said that they believed that he had told his friends to go out while the price is still low and buy some bonds. You can double your money overnight when Congress approves the plan for funding. And Madison made that charge on the floor of Congress. He did not say what he really believed, and what he and Jefferson were convinced was true, was that one of the insiders who made a lot of money on this crooked deal was none other than Hamilton himself. Now they couldn't accuse Hamilton of that on the floor of Congress because they had no proof. But they were convinced that Hamilton was such an inside dealer and such a crooked person that he himself had made money, that he had friends buy stock for him. They would be the ones who would go out and do it in public, and then it would be his money, and then he would get the money from it. Historians, we've debated about this, and we've tried to figure this out, and I think there's a kind of a consensus among historians that probably Hamilton did tip off some of his friends. We think, it's very hard to know because there's no records of this, because it's the kind of a transaction that you don't put into writing, so there's no record of it for historians. But we think it's probably true that Hamilton did tell some of his well-placed friends, some of his good buddies, some of the New York stockholders and investors and so forth that he hobnobbed with. He said, hey, this is a good time to buy some government bonds because they're going to go up in value. We think he did that. We don't feel that he himself benefited from it. People have tried to sort of track down his financial status, which is pretty hard to do, but people have tried to study what he had and see if you can find like some records of his financial transactions with a bank or whatever. And nobody can document that he did, so we don't think Hamilton himself had benefit from it. So he was not that dishonest, but he was dishonest enough to have told some of his friends. So this becomes kind of an issue of personal integrity, of personal honesty. The Republicans are accusing Hamilton of being dishonest, of telling some friends a chance to make a lot of money sort of almost illegally. It would be illegal today, it might have been illegal then, but it certainly was unethical and immoral in those days. And they accused Hamilton of being part of that. And they tried to hold out for some way to have the debt paid in a way that people would get what they had paid for it, not what the face value was, which might be twice what they paid for it. Well, Hamilton had to respond to these charges, and he's sort of trying to explain why he favors this, even though it's true that, yeah, some people are going to make a big killing on it. That's true. He wouldn't admit that maybe it was because he had told them, but he admits, yes, it's true. You can't deny the fact. I mean, it's a fact that some people had paid $500 for a bond and they're not going to get compensated by having Congress redeem it for $1,000. Fund it for, that's the word that's used, fund it for $1,000. That's true. But he said that's not necessarily a bad thing. He said that's not really wrong. He said, first of all, why had the person who sold the bond, why had they decided to sell it? What made them, on a certain point, just 2 days before, whatever, why had they finally decided to sell it? Well, they're willing to sell it because they sort of lost confidence in America. They think America is going to fail. They're willing to dump a bond just to save themselves because they say Congress is never going to get together. I'm never going to get full value for that. Might as well get what I can. If I wait any longer, it's just going to get worse. I'm going to sell it now. And they're saying this as a lack of faith in the country. They don't think the country is going to succeed. They don't think it's ever going to be able to pay its debts. They think the country is going to fail. A lot of people in England were saying that. Many people in England were convinced that the United States was going to fail, it was doomed to fail, that republics could not make it, that people had to have monarchies. The only way you could run a country was with a strong leader. You have to have a strong, powerful leader who will tell you what to do, and that his word is what has to be done. You need a monarch. There were people who believed that. And they were convinced that the United States then was going to fail, and that the Americans were going to come back to them on our knees, begging to be readmitted to the British Empire, begging to be readmitted to a proper monarchical government, and forget this stupid idea of republicanism. And there were people like that who were predicting that, and things were not looking good. The United States had not done well as an independent nation under the Articles. We had done very poorly. So there were people in England who were saying, it didn't matter we gave them their independence, it won't hurt because they're going to just come back to us and they're going to rejoin the empire and they're going to be glad to do it. And we'll be able to get a lot of very valuable terms out of them because they're going to be so desperate to come back and then join us. So there were people who were saying that, and Hamilton is saying, yeah, that's a threat. We need to ensure the survival of the country. We need to have a country that's able to pay its debts. And you can't do that if you're going to somehow take away from people the money that they've gotten by investing. Because the people who bought the bonds, the people who sold it, were saying, we don't think the country is going to make it. The people who are buying it are the people who have faith in America. They're saying, by the fact that they buy that bond, they're paying $500 for a bond that, has been, the value of it isn't going down and down and down for years. But they're saying, we still think the United States is going to make it. We're confident in America. We think America is going to be a successful country, and we're willing to put our money on there. We're sort of gambling. Both sides are sort of gambling. The side that sells, they're gambling that the U.S. is going to fail. The people who buy are gambling that the U.S. is going to succeed. And Hamilton says, those are the people we want. We should reward those people. Yeah, they're going to get a big reward. Yeah, they're going to make a lot of money. But that's okay. They deserve it. And we want people to have faith in the country. And we want people to have faith in the country by paying them to have faith in the country, is what it comes down to. And he says that, in fact, what you want is to have a country that rewards people who support it. It rewards them financially. And he was very cynical about human nature. He's quoted as saying, the people, sir, is a great beast. And sometimes he's quoted as that as though he's saying common people, are, the ordinary people are they're just a mob, they're riotous, they're a beast. But that's not quite what he meant. He meant human beings, the people. He meant all people. He didn't just mean ordinary people, or he meant rich people as well. People are basically selfish. They're out to look for themselves. They're trying to get as much as they can, any way they can. This is human nature. People are basically rotten people. All they're interested in is money, 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 money. And so he's kind of cynical about it. He's very negative on human nature. But he says, look, accept the fact that that's human nature. People want money. The trick is to turn that basic human selfishness, evil, into a positive form, to get some benefit out of it. And the way to do that is to have a debt. A debt is a perfectly legal thing to do. You borrow money and you pay interest on it. And as long as you're paying interest on that money, people are going to support you. They want you to survive and to prosper, because that's the only way they're ever going to get paid back. Sometimes with tongue-in-cheek, I tell students, look, if you're going to start a small business, say you start a restaurant, you want to start a little restaurant, and you want to have your business succeed, you want to have your business prosper. Well, one of the ways to do that is to borrow money from the mafia. And the mafia will ensure that your business stays successful. They'll make sure that no competitor comes along and undercuts you. If somebody else tries to start a business, the mafia will sort of put them out of business so that you have the market to yourself. They'll make sure that people who go there are do so safely, that going into that restaurant is not going to be dangerous. Whereas if you go into a competitor, yeah, you're going to get bombed out. And so the mafia will take care of you, and they'll help you prosper. But of course, the trick is you got to keep paying interest on the debt, and you may end up paying that forever, and it may be a lot more than you ever borrowed. But that's the point. You get the protection, yeah, you pay for it, and that's what Hamilton is saying. Take advantage of the fact that human nature is selfish, but let that selfishness be such that they want the country to succeed. The only way they're going to get their money is if the country succeeds. So go into debt, and as a matter of fact, he set it up that the debt, the new bonds that we're going to issue, the face value, those bonds are going to be very low interest rate, but they're going to be like 40-year bonds. The government's going to be paying interest on those bonds for 40 years. And eventually you'll end up paying a lot more in interest than you will in principal, because you're going to spread it out over a 40-year period. But that's okay, because for 40 years, the rich people in this country are going to benefit from it. Yeah, and it's rich people who are going to be benefiting from it. That's okay. They're going to be supporting the country. We need rich people to help us. We need the support of rich people. If rich people want the country to go down, we're in terrible shape. We've got a real problem. So it's good to have rich people supporting us. We want rich people to support us. And one way to get it is to pay them money, and in the form of interest on a debt. So he says, this is fine. Yeah, people are going to make money, but that's the way they're going to support the country, and that's what we want. So Congress voted, and Congress approved funding and assumption. In Congress, the Federalists had a majority. The Federalists were the party that did vote to accept Hamilton's plan. Funding and assumption was adopted. It was a great success. Within a couple of years, the bonds of the United States that were going at 50% of face value back in the day were now selling like 10-20% above face value. The actual going price was so great because the bonds were a very safe investment. U.S. government bonds were as good as gold. They were absolutely valuable, and that has remained down to the present. At this day, today, the most basic currency, the most basic form of wealth in the world is U.S. government bonds. Every other country has based its financial system on U.S. government bonds as the base. That's the standard of investment. And Hamilton's plan has carried this country through to the present with a sound economic system. Now the key to it, of course, is you got to be paying interest on the bonds. And the key to that is you have to be getting revenue, you have to have taxes, you have to have the tariff. Without the taxes, the whole thing falls apart. But that's Hamilton's plan. So Congress accepted funding an assumption, and Hamilton proceeded, and the debt problem in the United States, which had been terrible during the Articles, the debt problem was solved. There was no more issue of debts that Congress couldn't pay. And the states all got their debts paid, and even Rhode Island got its debts paid off. So the whole issue of debt went away. Hamilton solved it. I think I've only got a few minutes here, so I'll talk about something else that came up that's kind of a separate issue, but I had skipped over it. And before I start Hamilton's third plan, I just want to finish up this little loose end that I've got here, because there's some relevance to it. When the United States was going through the XYZ affair, there was a time that it looked like we might be going to war against France. So Congress passed a number of laws in that time, and these were the Federalists who controlled Congress as of 1798. They passed a number of laws to prepare us for the possibility of war. Now these laws all became irrelevant because we didn't go to war. President Adams succeeded. He got France to back down on their demand for bribes and settled the issue of canceling our debt in a way that benefited the United States. But during that time, Congress passed a number of laws. One of these was called there were two laws called the Alien and Sedition Acts. And what Congress was worried about was the possibility that in wartime there might be dissension that would divide the country, that we might be divided in some way by people who were opposing the war, opposing the president, and generally just dividing the country. So these laws made it illegal to criticize the president, criticize the country, criticize the leaders, and the point is to maintain national unity by making criticism, making dissent illegal. So Congress passed those laws. The Alien Law applied to foreigners, to immigrants who could be deported. The Sedition Act applied to American citizens who could be jailed. So American citizens under the Alien Sedition Acts were jailed. Some newspapers who'd criticized President Adams, criticized the war, or the possibility of war, went to jail. Now, think about these laws. What do these laws represent? Well, it's pretty obvious. We're talking about here a violation of freedom of speech. So this becomes a serious issue we'll talk about in our next class.